try to shoot us one of my own. I guess you want to do all. I tell you what, your work ethic is inspiring. Your work rate is inspiring.
So look at this photo. This is one of the most famous men in Ireland standing in front of a portrait of two of the most powerful men in the world. Now, there's something that Donald Trump and Conor McGregor have in common, and that isn't just the far-right xenophobic politics, it's that they have both been found liable for rape in civil trials. And today, I want to talk about why Gen Z men are so just cooked generally, that the brains are fried. Part of the reason why we are seeing Gen Z men increasingly turn to fascism, it's because a lot of the role models in the world, like traditional role models, like an athlete or, you know, someone who is the most powerful man in the world, even though, you know, people like myself think the United States as a nation state is so evil. When you're growing up, you're told, oh, the president, there's some sort of aura of respect around the presidency. And you have revered presidents who essentially became martyrs and saints like JFK. And you're conditioned to think that this office has integrity, respectability. So when you have someone like Donald Trump in that office, of course, to a lot of people, maybe liberal people, they'll say, oh, it's disgusting, an affront to the United States. But then to a lot of other people, it's like, well, he's the president. So every single child in America right now is growing up with Donald Trump being the president. Everyone who's Gen Z remembers him being the president twice. It's so normal. How many people know that he assaulted his first wife? How many people know he's actually been held liable for rape? And he's also been sued following that because he keeps saying more stuff about his victim. But this is the most powerful man in the world who's just been increasingly normaled, memeified. And when you see like Gen Z influencers like Logan Paul, Jake Paul, they're all just promoting this guy and having normal conversations with him, not bringing this up.
POV. 100 days left before President Trump delivers another knockout.
Got a good stance. Loki, he got a jab, I think.
That's pretty good. We're not messing with this guy. Do you ever fight your brother?
Not in real life.
You
no.
practiced a little bit.
Never.
With him, right?
We've never even sparred. But I was willing to step in for Mike Tyson when Tyson got sick, and we actually ran it up the chain in Netflix.
It's hard for brothers to fight, though.
Well, me and Jake decided we both come from a place of love, and whatever the outcome would be, we'd have to be okay with it.
Who makes more money?
It depends on the year. It depends if Jake has fights.
People are going to just increasingly like look up to this guy and see him as normal because he is so sanitized by the media. Yeah, we see him, politics nerds. We know what he stands for. We know what he does. We know all that stuff. Most people aren't politics nerds, so they don't know this stuff. They just see the president, they're told to like him, they might see something that makes him appear likable. You know, he is human, we're all laughing at him talking about everything computer, and he just gets an absolute pass. And also, how he's previously spoke about women is seen okay, and also to lots of people, they see misogyny is not demonized, it is rewarded. And Conor McGregor is another great example, alongside Andrew Tate, people who are popular among Gen Z men, who are espousing far-right politics, and who are, in their rhetoric, misogynist, but have also committed vile acts against women. And while not as normalised as Donald Trump, they're still being promoted and normalised in our society. So if you are a Gen Z man, you have these three figures, and in terms of two of them, it's actually pretty acceptable for them to be your heroes. Like, you can go around saying that, and it's not gonna be like controversial to millions and millions of people. And I want to talk about the evolution of that, because as much as I don't like to focus normally on individuals, there is something about Donald Trump which has just allowed this culture to flourish of just the most vile misogynistic men being promoted and revered by loads of younger men. Because of course, if you're seeing misogyny as a path to power and success, you're less likely to think that is actually a bad thing, combined with the political landscape at the moment, with so many conservative politicians talking about rolling back women's rights. And it's fair to say, the men we are putting on a pedestal as a society, sadly, are some of the most terrible ones. And it's not surprising Gen Z men, who just like most Gen Z people, regardless of gender, are disenfranchised and they're more susceptible to more extreme messaging. It's not surprising they are revering these figures, especially when they have been successful in more traditionally masculine pursuits like, you know, fighting or business or whatever. So I want to talk about all of this today just because Gareth Southgate, who used to be the England manager, the England football manager, he spoke about this, and I thought he made some good points, but I just want to talk about like our general societal acceptance of these people and talk about like how different it is to when I was growing up. Before we go any further, if you want to support the channel, check out my Patreon, check out YouTube memberships, and also follow me on social media at Blue Sky and Instagram. So before we talk more about Conor McGregor, Donald Trump, and Andrew Tate, let's just use Gareth Southgate's recent speech to frame this, because I thought he made some good points. The headline was sensationalist. I actually posted on Reddit a breakdown of what he actually said relevant to the headline. But Gareth said, rather than turning to teachers, sports coaches, or youth group leaders, Gareth Southgate has said he feared many young men were searching for direction online. He said they were finding a new kind of role model, one that too often did not have their best interests at heart. These are callous, manipulative, and toxic influencers whose sole drive is for their own gain. They willingly trick young men into believing that success is measured by money or dominance, that strength means never showing emotion, and that the world, including women, is against them. Too many young men are isolated, too many feel uncomfortable opening up to friends or family. Many don't have mentors, teachers, coaches, or bosses. Young men inevitably try to handle whatever situation they find themselves in alone. Young men end up withdrawing, reluctant to talk or express their emotion. They spend more time online searching for direction and are falling into unhealthy alternatives. So saying what like a lot of us have been saying, and seems to just be like the obvious truth, but it is nice to see from someone who did hold this like coveted, like masculine position of the coach of the England football team. I want to kind of pivot from what he's saying, because of course he's an older man, probably like born in the 60s or 70s, and he grew up playing football, and he's talking about like role models, and probably without realizing everything he touched on. He says a lot of important stuff. He's talking about like the breakdown of community, toxic masculinity, making men feel like they should go at it alone, talking about obviously like social media, brainwashing. There's so much of that stuff that is priming young men to just be super toxic in their political views, especially as he outlined in regards to misogyny. But before we get into the misogynists we're talking about, let's just talk about how the general landscape has changed because of social media and Donald Trump. So I'm specifically talking about my experience as a man. And, you know, you might not be a man and you can relate, but basically growing up from a young age to when I was a teenager, as a man, as someone who liked traditionally like masculine things, grew up in like that masculine environment, my heroes were always athletes. And that is something that most people can relate to. Weirdly enough, as someone who doesn't like Liverpool, Michael Owen was one of my heroes when I was like 5 or 6, because he was just like the best player. Like everyone wanted to be Michael Owen when I was like that age. And then it kind of evolved, like, you know, obviously we had David Beckham. We had the rise of the celebrity athlete. But why it was different back then is we loved David Beckham and we loved Michael Owen, but we didn't know anything about them, because we weren't on social media. And even as I got older, when I was on social media, it was just so different, because so many celebrities didn't have social media. You didn't know every single thought they had about politics or how they treated people in their own personal lives. All you saw them as was this aspirational figure, someone who was at the peak of their craft, someone who did stuff you respected so much, and someone you wanted to be. And that is something a lot of kids probably can still relate to. And lots of kids won't know this, but even as we got older, we're like, I don't know David Beckham's political views. And that is partly like PR from the celebrity themselves, but also because this was pre-social media, we just didn't know. We didn't know, so we kind of had this blissful ignorance where we could project ourselves onto our heroes and we could make them even better than what they were. So not only is David Beckham a great footballer, he's also like a super nice guy, and I want to be just like him. And because his image was relatively sanitized, although there was an insane media focus on him, nothing really that terrible ever came out that you would turn against him. There were a few cases like John Terry, Ashley Cole, where you did hear about them being pretty terrible people in person or doing high profile things like racial abuse, which often obviously we saw with people like Luis Suarez and John Terry. At the same time, in my experience, we revere these people. And also another person, this is a really weird one, because I've said bad things about Lord of the Rings. I was obsessed with Lord of the Rings as a kid, and I was obsessed with the books and the movies. I watched the behind the scenes stuff, and I remember saying to my parents, I want to be a director. What a weird thing, I think, for a child to say. I don't want to be Legolas. I don't want to be Aragorn. I want to be Peter Jackson. Like, I literally said stuff like that. Peter Jackson was actually one of my idols because he made like some of my favorite movies as a kid. And what's funny about that is it's kind of similar, is my only exposure to Peter Jackson's personality was through the behind the scenes videos of The Lord of the Rings. I knew nothing about his personal views, nothing about his politics. I still don't today because I haven't gone looking for it. But there wasn't that sensationalism around it. There wasn't social media allowing everyone to broadcast themselves 24/7. So you just didn't know what these people were like. And that applies to actors. Like Orlando Bloom was another one. I always like idolized growing up as well. So I had all these like masculine figures doing masculine things. But again, they couldn't influence me politically or socially because they were just like heroes where I projected so much onto them because of them doing things I like playing cool characters in movies like Kingdom of Heaven or Lord of the Rings, or making a film I like, or being a great athlete who I wanted to be like in terms of how I play. And that's what I thought like their worth was. Fast forward to 2025, and you have people like Conor McGregor, where obviously people respect his athletic talent, but you literally cannot divorce that from his personality. As like a teenage man, you can't look up to Conor McGregor without being okay with the rest of it. You can't look up to his fighting style without knowing all the shit he says about immigrants, and him actually being someone who was found liable for rape, right? If you like Conor McGregor now, which plenty of people do, by the way, you have to accept all that stuff. And back in the day, we had more like respectability in just politics and society. It was a sham, of course, because so much of his stuff was just covered up instead. But it was covered up because if stuff came out about you that was really, really terrible, then you would be ostracized. I think about Mel Gibson, right? What he said was obviously terrible. If Mel Gibson didn't say that until 2025, what would the reaction be today? You know it would be so different. Yes, many would be horrified. Would he be like cancelled as he was? I don't think he would. Now, in regards to Conor McGregor, of course I understand that in boxing culture and fighting culture, a lot of boxers weren't that nice. Like Mike Tyson, terrible guy. Similar in regards to Conor McGregor with women. Plenty of boxers have been really, really terrible. But I still think Conor McGregor and Andrew Tate are reflective of a culture that increasingly like doesn't give a shit about anything you say, and that's because of Donald Trump. Now, a lot of you guys won't be old enough to remember this, but because I remember a pre-Trump world, what Trump essentially did was just open the floodgates, loads of racist and misogynistic rhetoric becoming increasingly normalized. Like there was a period, like 2010 or whatever, it felt like we were making progress. Gay marriage getting legalized across the Western world, more just general societal acceptance, more conversations about feminism. And it felt like, although Donald Trump didn't roll all them back, it was like, here is a reminder of what people actually think, not in public. And he made it okay to say these things again in public. And although it didn't immediately catch on, you're seeing now in society, everyone accepts Donald Trump. Look at the inauguration, all those tech CEOs. Look at all these companies agreeing to everything he's doing or pandering to him by removing DEI policies. Donald Trump, previously unacceptable, is now totally fine. And in that culture, we have him doing all the things he done, the thing recently with a civil case against him, and then he's president again, and people aren't more horrified as he's gotten worse. People are more accepting, and the media are even more complicit in rehabilitating this guy's image and going along with him. So now we're showing everyone, Donald Trump, most powerful man in the world, successful in business, everyone in America, all you young men, all you kids, this is how you do it. And if you want to be successful, be like Donald Trump. Move on a bit more to Conor McGregor. So he was found liable for rape in a civil case last year. Really damning, super disgusting. Like you can read it in graphic detail, what he did. That goes along with loads of terrible shit he's done, including assaulting people, but also coincides with him trying to rebrand himself as some sort of a political figure, trying to be the president of Ireland. The president of Ireland pretty much doesn't have any real political power. It's more like a ceremonial role, but he's trying to make it seem like it is something where he'll be like the dictator of Ireland, like Donald Trump in the United States. But again, this is so damning, so disgusting. And in a previous era, even as an MMA fighter, I think this would have just made him a pariah. But it doesn't now. This is the difference in culture. It doesn't. It actually, to a lot of people, makes him look like he's being screwed by the feminist system and they're trying to stitch him up. And also people saying he was found liable in civil court, so that's not actually real. Like with Donald Trump, because it's civil court and because they don't go to prison afterwards, people say it doesn't really count. Obviously, we see his meeting with Donald Trump, which is just like disgusting to like just everyone around the world who's a decent person to see these two swanning around the White House, and obviously being absolute Nazis as well. So here's Conor McGregor going on an anti-migrant rant as well.
I'm here to raise the issues the people of Ireland face, you know, and it'll be music to the people of Ireland's ears, because never on the main stage has the issues the people of Ireland face been spoke. You know, our government has long since abandoned the voices of the people of Ireland. And it's high time that America is made aware of what is going on in Ireland. What is going on in Ireland is a travesty. Our government is the government of zero action with zero accountability. You know, our money is being spent on overseas issues that has nothing to do with the Irish people. The illegal immigration racket is running ravage on the country. There are rural towns in Ireland that have been overrun in one swoop, that have become a minority in one swoop. So issues need to be addressed, and the 40 million Irish Americans, as I said, need to hear this, because if not, there will be no place to come home and visit.
So sex pests pandering to the far right, tale as old as time, obviously something Andrew Tate is doing right now as well. And in regards to this issue, if you guys are unaware about Irish politics right now, basically there's been a massive surge in anti-migrant sentiment, obviously been huge violent protests, spurred on often by misinformation around crimes done by people they thought were immigrants that turned out to be actual Irish citizens, that was stopped by actual immigrants. There's a lot of, obviously, Brazilians now in Ireland, and there's more just like multiculturalism in Ireland. It's very different from when I used to go there as a kid, where, contrasting to my upbringing in London, when I used to go to Ireland, you didn't really see much diversity generally. Now when you go there, I wouldn't say Ireland resembles like London or even Belfast, but it is noticeably more multicultural. Another tale as old as time, when there's economic issues and when a country has been fucked over by the 1%, who do they blame? Immigrants. And I don't really talk about Irish politics, but for people who don't know, if you think England is like a uniparty, or the UK is, Ireland is a uniparty. There is really no difference between the two main political parties who keep switching power since independence, right? Really nothing. And that means they're both neoliberal, both pro-austerity, both haven't been funding social programs for a long time. Ireland doesn't have universal healthcare, by the way, either. And obviously a big issue in Ireland right now is housing. Public housing, housing generally, so many landlords, Airbnbs in Dublin. The rent is just really fucking insane right now. It's a massive, massive problem. So when you have that problem and you have more refugees from Ukraine or the Middle East, and you just have more general migrants from places like Brazil, and you don't have enough housing, it's of course going to cause tension in the country itself. So you can do one of two things. You can blame the government's economic policies and decades of austerity and not properly funding anything good in Ireland. As much as I think England is going to hell, the difference between London and Dublin is so incredibly stark. One has evidence of actually having public funding properly. One is a country that has just been completely neglected by the uniparty for decades. And I don't like saying bad things about cities where my family are from, but in my opinion, the actual city of Dublin is a bit of a shithole. And a lot of it's just due to general poverty and just the general malaise of these neoliberal governments that will basically do nothing to solve the issues. And Ireland is actually one of the worst examples that skirts under the radar pretty much because their foreign policy is decent. But let me remind everyone, Ireland's foreign policy is only decent because it's a response to like British colonialism. They're not all just like the most moral people ever. Irish politicians are just as bankrupt and corrupt as American and English politicians, but Ireland just has better cultural PR, to be honest. And Conor McGregor is the ugly face of what we're seeing in Ireland right now. He's not unique to it, but also a lot of these anti-migrant movements in Ireland are actually funded by conservatives from the UK. So it's like English and Irish people are united around hating Muslims more. It's really bizarre. A lot of Irish people, of course, really hate Conor McGregor. A lot of the Irish elite hate Conor McGregor. Most general people in the Irish establishment really don't like him. And maybe they might agree with his xenophobic politics, but because of all the controversy around him, they just see him as a blight on Ireland, as bad as the potato blight. And here's Politics Joe Ireland talking about this, but then I'm going to show you the comments to how people actually still like him. And it's just another thing about these role models just being so terrible, but it seems like nothing they can ever do will detract from their fame and how much people idolize them, as long as they actually did something good once, like in Conor McGregor's case, was a good fighter once.
The one thing that unifies Irish people more than anything else is their hatred for Conor McGregor. By having this man who is liable for rape in a civil trial in the White House speaking for Ireland. Like, I know for certain he doesn't speak for me. He doesn't speak for my mates. He is someone that had the chance to be a fantastic role model and fantastic poster boy for what Ireland was, and squandered it. Punching a man in a bar because he wouldn't drink your shit whiskey. Intermittent stories in Irish media of him buying up retail properties in Dublin, hiking the rent, people who have had hairdressers, salons in communities for decades, if not generations. From one day to the next, their business is gone because a guy who claims to be the working class community hero has decided that he's going to start milking them for all they're worth. You look at this person that 10, 15 years ago, particularly working class boys in Ireland, looked at as, oh my God, this is somebody that speaks to me, showing something positive about where I'm from and what I am. You betrayed the trust of those people.
They're saying that we can't have immigration to this country, legal or otherwise, because these men, these others, are a threat to our women. The biggest irony of all is that they themselves are found through the judicial process to be massive threats to women.
While Conor McGregor is, of course, way more controversial at the moment because it's recently that he was found liable, at the same time, we are seeing in very quick terms that all be sanitized. It didn't stop his visit to the White House, didn't stop him getting up on the podium and ranting again about immigration and basically wanting to be president of Ireland. Didn't stop any of that. So it's rehabilitating him once again in his image. And obviously Conor has always had that appeal to Gen Z men just generally in America and Ireland and the UK. And now people are saying, you know, he's come from nothing, he's fought his way to the top, and here he is at the White House speaking for us. But that's what they see. That's what they see. He didn't get found guilty and he's not in prison. He's gone from the bottom to the top. And that's an aspirational figure right there. And he speaks for Ireland. This fascist rhetoric speaks for Ireland. So again, when you're showing people that's what gets rewarded in society, do you really expect a lot of young men to not gravitate towards this? Because when people like Andrew Tate are telling them that they'll be successful for being like terrible misogynists, and they see Donald Trump and Conor McGregor, it's hard to tell them this is a hindrance to their success. At the same time, of course, it's redirecting their anger in things like general capitalism towards things like immigration or women, which is completely wrong and is obviously why Gen Z brains are so cooked right now. But even Conor McGregor's language being popular and people agreeing with it, again, is caused by the inactivity of the Irish government and generally what they've been doing to Ireland for a long, long time. Sadly, Irish independence has just meant for generations that the Irish elite have cut themselves to capitalism and Catholicism, and while one is waning at the moment, as we saw the recent election, it doesn't seem like Irish capitalism is going to change anytime soon. But yeah, we have two people found liable for terrible shit, although it is linked. Donald Trump loves the MMA, Dana White is a big Trump ally, he's now on the board at Meta, but also Dana White recently welcomed the Tate brothers when they came to watch a fight in America, right? And also, it's pretty clear there's someone in the White House who helped facilitate them travelling to America. So the BBC is reporting, did the White House help end the Tate's travel ban? So they've been freed from travel restrictions in Romania after several high-level White House officials took an interest in their case. It's unclear what role Donald Trump's administration may have played in the release, but his top envoys have said to raise the case with Romania's foreign minister. So it says Trump's special envoy Richard Grenell raised the issue at a security conference in Munich. One of Tate's lawyers now works as the White House liaison to the US Justice Department. So although Andrew Tate is the big boogeyman right now and everyone knows him as just being like this really violent misogynistic groomer and everything, at the same time what the Donald Trump administration is just showing is that none of this stuff fucking matters. None of this matters. You're on the most gross charges, but I'm going to get my government to pressure the Romanian government to free you, basically, to free you and let you come to America. And then you can meet up with Conor McGregor and Dana White and attend an MMA fight. And, you know, if you saw Andrew Tate at the White House, like, would you be surprised? Like, I do feel that's a step too far. At the same time, I can still see it happening. Like, think of all these terrible people. Like, Conor McGregor isn't too much different from Andrew Tate. And he was there. The only thing with Conor McGregor is he's in more mainstream culture a bit more. But what we're seeing right now is just these men being elevated and elevated, and their misogynistic crimes are not a hindrance to this, and you could even argue it's a benefit to them. So when you're showing that to so many young men around the world of this is the pathway to power and success, especially at a time when the economy is just not working for younger generations at all, you know they're going to gravitate towards this. And even what like Gareth Southgate was saying, like the role models, the heroes of the past, they're so different now. Like these people being elevated so high and people knowing what they stand for completely and still being okay with it just shows they're riding this wave of general fascist misogyny that's been sweeping like the Western world for like the last 8 or so years and has just reached an absolute fever pitch at the moment where, yeah, there are no consequences for not just being misogynistic, there aren't consequences for actually doing misogynistic crimes if you're famous enough and have the right connections, and society will just accept you because, yeah, even though previously they didn't like Donald Trump because he was so uncouth or whatever. At the same time, now they're all just linked economically, and as this oligarchy increasingly centralizes, who sucks up to power is more important than what you've done. And because Andrew Tate has promoted Donald Trump a lot, that's why he's getting off. And because so many people now in the MAGA movement are just groiper incels, of course they're going to be promoting these people and not see any problem with all the misogynistic stuff they've done. So yeah, a bit of a doomer angle to end the video, but let me know what you guys think in the comments. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching.